a lot of business people forget that we only have one body and we're only here once, so to speak. So I think actually the whole sport thing and exercise is really important as a business person. It's a bit like when you first buy a business. You know, they say the first 3 months are the really most important thing. You know, you think you've bought it and that's the deal. Actually, it's not. You need to make the thing work.
Whatever happens with the technology, and there's such a rate of change and so much is evolving so rapidly. But a lot of the people we speak to, that human element is still so important, and a lot of the successful failure still does come down to people and not just technology as well.
Mike Rutherford of Genesis, he had a great line. He would just go, Simon, phone me when it gets to oh shit. And when it gets to oh shit, that means it's all gone off the rails. And that's when we'll know how well we work together.
Hello and welcome to the Business Growth Show.
I'm John from Octopus Computers.
And I'm Adam from Active Internet Marketing.
This is the show where we sit down with business owners, founders and entrepreneurs from Stamford and the Greater Rutland area.
We discuss their journey, look at their wins and their challenges, and get practical advice that you can apply.
New episodes come out fortnightly, so if you want to stay up to date, drop us a follow or subscribe wherever you're listening.
Good morning, Simon. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really excited to have a conversation with you and find out a lot more about yourself and your previous successes, as well as things you're working on currently. Perhaps you could give us a bit of an introduction to begin with.
Sure. It's just a great pleasure to be here, so thanks very much. I'm Simon Morris. I've been in business some 30-odd years, started off as an entrepreneur. I now build and buy businesses, so I work with business owners who want to exit or sell or looking to grow their business. Excellent.
And perhaps you could tell us a bit more about your times as an entrepreneur and some of the success and challenges you had in that area.
Yes, it was genuine roller coaster. So started a business literally off a thought that, you know, I would like to get into sports sponsorship. So approached athletes to begin with, had no idea really what I was doing, but had been through the usual sort of education, management trainee courses, and just thought that entrepreneurship was far more about just having a holistic view of business, so actually sort of enjoying it as well as sort of making some money. So literally ideas popped up, thought I would go ahead and do them. So have worked in selling coffee, sales and marketing, ready-made cocktails, a retreats business, and take that experience through to what I do now.
Excellent. Quite a variety of different industries then.
Yeah.
And I guess if we could start with the sport area and look at that for a little while, I guess you met some really quite strong personalities in that market, and a lot of sports people are looking for positive things they can apply their discipline and their really focused sort of approach they take to sport to a career after sport. And I guess you found quite a bit of opportunity in that area then.
Yeah, I think it's twofold actually. I think one is a lot of business people forget that we only have one body and we're only here once, so to speak. So I think actually the whole sport thing and exercise is really important as a business person. So that's on a sort of personal level. And then you're absolutely right. I mean, I had the pleasure of working with Linford Christie, Sally Gunnell, Steve Backley, Colin Jackson, you know, Olympic high quality athletes. And I think the transition from the disciplines and the habits that they adopt are very much related to business. I mean, you know, they're very focused. They're not looking for the quick win. That's a bad pun, actually. They are looking for a quick win, particularly over 100 meters. But actually, they keep doing things time and time again, and just reflecting and clarifying exactly where they are. So there's huge learnings out of sport, I think.
The consistent application of knowing, of applying what you know to be the right route with sports people, I guess, is huge.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And they're good fun. They're great people to be around because they work really hard and they play quite hard as well.
And I guess on a personal level, you can learn a lot from those people, but you can really help them as well, because a lot of them, are so focused on the sports side of it that then the business side is all new and quite exciting for them, and they're not sure where they were going to take their career once they do finish the active side of sport.
Yeah, and I think actually, sort of given my hairline, and actually in the time I was working with elite athletes, there was no help at all, and actually now I think there is quite a lot of help. But even so, it's become even more disciplined, and you literally have people cleaning your shoes, boot bags, all of this sort of stuff. And actually, when it stops, there's a huge void, and there needs to be a sort of transition. And some of them, the old archetype of footballers buying pubs never really worked out particularly well.
Yeah.
So, I think that.
Yeah, definitely. And tell us a bit more about the coffee and what you're doing in that side of things.
Yeah, that was, so I think entrepreneurship is very much about following an idea. So I was with a friend of mine who was giving a talk the other night, and he said that, he'd seen a business that he'd driven past, and somebody said, oh, it's for sale. So he went, oh, right, well, I'll go back and see if I can buy that business. And the coffee business was precisely that. I had a friend who was managing director of a white label coffee producer, and he just happened to say at the end of the meeting, I'm just, oh God, if I could develop a brand. So as you do, as you're walking out the door, you go, oh, well, I could do that for you. And then think as you get in the car, well, I'm not too sure how that would work, but we managed to put together a whole brand, bought the coffee obviously from them. So there was this very high quality grocery coffee that we were able to turn into a brand. And I just used the sales and marketing business that I had at the time to sell it.
How much of your success do you think comes from being able to be good at sales and marketing as opposed to finance and numbers and perhaps some of the more nitty gritty piece? Or is it a whole gamut of things?
It's great. Thank you for asking the question. I'm very much the sort of, so in the wealth dynamics, I'm a sort of a star character. I'm red in the insights. I describe it, I'm very much on the bow of the boat. So, I just think, oh, I've had an idea, that's great. Let's go ahead and that, which I think is sales and marketing. So knocking down doors is really important. And actually, without being corny, I think just talking to people is fascinating. So when I read the sales and marketing agency, we had 80 odd people on the phone selling product. And I always used to say, it's a great opportunity to travel the country and just talk to people, and I think that's what people forget. I think they see sales and marketing as a sort of binary yes, no type operation, when actually it's just having a conversation with another human being.
More consultative, more ask more questions, 2 ears, 1 mouth, all those usual mantras.
Yeah. And so numbers are really important. And over time, I appreciate that even more. But actually, they're not the sort of main driver. I think you can, and actually I've done better deals sometimes by just listening and then finding that actually there's something on the side, not on the side, it's sort of, you're talking about a particular product, but actually they want something else as well. So suddenly you're offering 3 or 4 different services, whereas if it's just tracking a number, then you would have missed that opportunity.
Completely agree with you. I think we do this podcast regularly, but I think both of us, one of the main benefits is actually sitting and listening to people, and we learn a lot ourselves just simply from doing it, as well as the other benefits. And just to ask you a bit more about that then. So when you're looking to work with somebody now or in the future, from a personal side, getting away from the numbers, what are some of the main qualities that you look for in individuals?
So I think commitment is very important. I think being humble is also useful. I think there are lots of people who think, well, I've had the idea, that's it. And and just, actually, it's very difficult to answer. It's just sort of a connection, if you like. I've come across some people and just thought, no, when I always remember I had so Mike Rutherford of Genesis was one of the investors I had in the mail order business
Right.
that I ran. And he had a great line. He would just go, Simon, phone me when it gets to oh shit. And when it gets to oh shit, that means it's all gone off the rails.
Right.
And that's when we'll know how well we work together. And I think that's that's almost the benchmark that I use. So I think it's, is this person going to be consistent, resilient, that all the words that we trot out, but actually when it all starts going wrong, is it going to be humble? And are we going to talk as human beings, or are we going to take great chunks out of each other?
Yeah, definitely. So there's quite a lot you have to assess about a person in quite a short period of time when you're deciding if they're going to be the right fit or not for you. There's a lot of calculations going on in your mind, I guess, to assess that person.
Yeah, and I think even more so now. I mean, you're in an area that I have huge admiration for, and you're very good at what you do. But the whole AI thing and the fact that you can produce CVs that are now almost vanilla is very difficult. And I think, without wanting to be political, the current employment laws mean that actually it's very difficult to sort of test and monitor those people working in businesses. And as a small business owner, I think it's really important that culture fits. If you've got a bad culture, then the business isn't going to work.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think in several of our last conversations, culture has come up and the importance of it, and we've delved into that. And exactly right. And I think what your earlier point, assessing somebody's CV in a document they put in front of you in an age of AI is becoming increasingly difficult to do. So I think having honed those skills of weighing people up, making a judgment of what they're telling is perhaps true or not true, and all the experience you built up in that area is going to be so crucial, making the right decisions moving forward with the right individuals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And tell us about is there particular industries you're focused on at the moment, or you particularly like, or you're assessing in terms of an industry rather than an individual?
No. So the sales and marketing agency I had for about 20 odd years, again, very entrepreneurial, started out of an idea, a sales director. So I have a sales and marketing background. Some would say it's bullshit, but actually I'd like to call it sales and marketing. But I was working with an organisation, sales director came in and had a Clark shoebox that he literally threw on the desk and went, the reps are leaving. And again, the idea just came up, and I sort of said, well, what's the problem? He said, well, the problem is we have nobody now talking to our customers. So again, that attitude of, let's say yes and work it out later. So I said, well, we can make some phone calls. So we started making some phone calls. We had a lovely lady who'd done a bit of telemarketing before. And she sort of said, this is great. I'll make some phone calls, see what happens. And about 3 months later, he came back and he said, this is extraordinary because I've got more data. I understand my customers better. They're happier. I'm seeing a rate of sale go up. And he suddenly said, we need to give this a name. So we came up with this tag, virtual territory management, which was doing what a rep does, but without the visit. And that grew to, let's say, 80 odd people making phone calls for people like Nestle, Mars, Bayer, Danone, very big, large corporations who wanted to get to their second-tier customers in a more cost-effective way. And so consequently, I was really fortunate. I learnt lots of we were really good at pub quizzes because, we just had so much information about weird things that people did. Contact lenses, we could talk about contact lenses. We could talk about lawn seed. We could talk about paint. It was just great. So a rather long-winded reply to say I then go back into those sectors. So it's pet, vet, pharmaceutical, DIY, construction, print. So all all the sectors that I worked in through that sales and marketing agency are the sectors that I'm interested in terms of buy and build. Because I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I understand their language and can talk to them.
From a buy and build perspective, is there an end goal of exit? Is it release back to market? Is it retain forever with reduced equity? What's the plan?
For me?
Yeah.
Not a great answer, but all of that in terms of in terms of some business owners just want a sort of consultative point of view, get them ready. So I'm working with a funeral business at the moment, producing a information memorandum for them, and they already have somebody who wants to buy them, but they want to check that the value is correct. And then at another level, it's going through that phase, but then getting them ready for exit, finding a buyer, and then potentially buying. So I have offers on the table with a print business, a calibration business, a pet business, and somebody in construction. And the idea of that is to keep them maybe 3 to 5 years, do a roll up, and then sell on.
That sounds like an enormous amount of work. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs or traditional founders would run to the hills at the thought of running 4 or 5 businesses concurrently. How do you do it?
Oh, so again, really appreciate the question, because actually as an entrepreneur, I found myself on a treadmill just doing. You know, it was just doing the work and chasing people and checking it. So I don't want to do any of the work. So the businesses I work with are normally multi-million pound turnover, profitable, have a management structure in place. So I'm there just to facilitate what the owner needs and wants at that particular time, and then to use the expertise that I have in that sort of broad business environment to help them grow and then sell on, basically.
We mentioned AI a bit earlier and spoke about it, but what other challenges do you particularly see in a cross section of industries and different businesses? I guess you see modern challenges that keep coming up again and again for all of them, or
yeah. So I think people and communication is really important today. I know, so that may seem like an odd thing to say, but counterintuitive. You know, we have so much data. I don't think we're really communicating very well.
Yeah.
And I appreciate this, but I think communication amongst people is really important. And actually, I'm working with a business at the moment, and we've gone back to letter writing and phone calls and seeing phenomenal results. You know, people just going, "Oh wow, God, you know, this is clear communication. We can talk to somebody. Isn't that great?" So I think we mentioned it before, but I think culture's really important and has been going on for a long time. I think in the business world today, I don't think small business owners are really being given the opportunity. Again, not wanting to be political, but I think, you know, tax increases, the whole human resource sort of tactic, laws, doesn't really help. And I think actually the small business owner is a real good opportunity for growth. I think robotics might be, so to go sort of looking more and more, I think AI is something that we have to, you know, it's here. We need to understand it. We need to use it. I think you have some great skill sets in that area. And I think, actually, I was reading an article today that China has moved from about 180-odd thousand robots or robots per person or whatever it was,
right,
to nearly over 2 million.
Wow.
And you can go into dark factories now and, you know, they literally don't have the lights on because there's no human being there. It's just all robots. So I think we need to encompass and bring these things into business life, but without forgetting, you know, we are intuitive. We can, you know, be emotional, and as long as we have these things helping us, then I think that's good news.
I hope you're enjoying today's episode. Please remember to like, give us a rating, give us a follow and subscribe wherever you're listening if you're enjoying the show.
And you mentioned the people side of it
Yeah.
a couple of times there, and it just shows, I think, whatever happens with the technology, and there's such a rate of change, and so much is evolving so rapidly. But a lot of the people we speak to, that human element is still so important, and a lot of the successful failure still does come down to people and not just technology as well.
Yeah.
It kind of leads me to my next question as well, because I'm a bit intrigued, really. So, when you had the sales and marketing business,
A bit intrigued.
well, yeah, very intrigued.
Come on, Adam.
The sales and marketing business you had, thinking back to that time, did you? And you mentioned that you had a lady that was a lovely lady, you said, and she did well on the phone to start. And I'm very intrigued that. Did you find more success with hiring experienced salespeople and phone people through that time, or did you find greater success hiring people with the right attitude and then applying the sales knowledge to them?
So very much the right attitude.
Right.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I think you would agree with me if, you can train and coach people. And actually, it was really interesting. I mean, we had... sort of joked about the pub quiz, but we had a wide, we were selling pet food at one stage, or one area of the office, all the way through to vaccines.
Right.
So actually, you needed people. So the people talking about pet food were mainly dog and cat owners. They were enthusiastic about it. They understood the benefits of the product and that sort of thing. Whereas if you're selling vaccine, we had to employ vets at the time who'd never actually done any selling. They were just vets, but they understood the benefit of the product and were able to speak the language. So it's very much about the culture and the attitude, I think, rather than, experience is good. I would like to think I can bring some experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say just because on your CV I'm a great salesperson, you're actually going to be the best salesperson in comparison to somebody who's got the right attitude.
Across all these different businesses that you've owned, run, led, it sounds like you've got quite consistent processes through them, sort of a solid hiring process that you can constantly fall back to. Is that fair, or is it always dynamic?
So I think it's developed over time. I think, like everything, it's evolved. So what I'm very keen on an acronym called, or I use an acronym called CREAM. And by CREAM, I mean you need to be clear. The R&E is reverse engineering, so I don't like planning. I much prefer reverse engineering and thinking, where do I want to be in a year's time, and then working backwards. Then the action, and then monitoring the whole process. And so, and that came up because I sort of adopt that principle. So, I need to be clear where I am. So if the process is not working, then I'm a great believer in we don't take enough time out just to actually think about the business. Not just to go off and am I doing? It's just actually sort of right. Well, I'll take myself off for a couple of hours and just think. And so I think if you're clear, you then start evolving and changing the process. And by reverse engineering it, you're actually looking at where you want to be. So rather than setting a goal, you're actually sort of going, actually, this is what it's going to look like. This is how it's going to function. In a year's time or 3 years' time or whatever it is, and then the action and the monitoring.
Do you think that's something most entrepreneur founders should be doing, or do you think that's where they can gain the most value? Do you think?
100%. I mean, I hold my hand up completely. I was literally like that blinkered racehorse.
Yeah.
I'm just, this is it. I need to get to £1 million, so I'm going to do whatever it. And I can actually, when I got up this morning, I was thinking about this, and I was just thinking, if I'd still been in that sort of what I call business mode, I would have been completely ruled by the diary. I would have looked and I would have done X number of jobs. Whereas, I was able to come up here, do this.
Get off the tools.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I meet many, particularly, I think the pandemic had a huge impact on business people. Some people did really well in it, others did really badly. And most of the business owners I talk to now use the word tired. And they just go, I'm knackered. I want to get out of here.
So when you're looking for a business to acquire or work with, aside from perhaps their personality traits such as resilience, are there particular things that you're looking for from, say, an EBITDA perspective or from client base or growth rate or anything like that?
Yeah. So it's a certain turnover, it's a certain EBITDA, and then it's does it fit into what I understand, and then what's its organisational structure? Who could step up, or who is already? So actually, the calibration business that I've recently put an offer in on, the general manager is pretty much doing the work already. So that's not criticism of the owner. It's just they've been sensible enough to go, you're not buying me, you're buying the business type thing. So that's important in terms of organisation and how it moves on. And then it's what could I bring to the party? So sales and marketing is really important. Growth, and often, again, entrepreneurship is quite siloed in a sense that, you just work in one particular sector. But actually, because of the sales marketing agency I ran, I saw lots of different sectors, and what worked in optics wasn't necessarily being done in the veterinary sector or wasn't being done in DIY. And then, so an example of that was the veterinary world were doing lunch and learns pre-COVID, and actually that could have been done in the pet trade as well, but they didn't. So we instigated that, and then after COVID or the pandemic, we went, well, we can do this virtually. So actually, we set up webinars in the vet sector. We actually used to phone local pizza shops. So we found veterinary practice that we're going to do the webinar with, phone the local pizza place.
Carry on.
And hopefully not like the technical glitch. It went well, and the pizza arrived. We were doing the webinar, so it was a virtual lunch and learn, and we actually took that into different sectors, having done it into the vet sector. So it's what can I bring to the party that's going to help this business grow?
How much of that is these innovative sales approaches and it's innovation for the sector it's in, not necessarily innovation for you, where that's driving a lot of the growth? Or are there more operational improvements as well?
Oh yeah, I think again, if as business owners we reflected, it's much easier. I mean, it's a cliche, isn't it? To sell more to the existing customers. It's going to cost you a lot more to get a new customer. So I think you start looking at the processes. And again, I have a great friend who had a nursery business, as in sort of children's nursery. And he noticed that people who were coming from a distance were coming as a family, or the husband and wife and then maybe the young child. And it was always the husband who was sort of walking into the shop going, oh, I really don't want... So this is not a sexist comment, by the way. Mm-hmm. Just, but, I really don't want to be here. So he just went up to one of the guys and he went, look, can I pay your petrol? And the guy went, wow. Yeah, that's and he went, well, you've come a long way and I really appreciate that, and you wouldn't have come, And he went, yeah. So he then decided that he would pay the petrol for people who came from a certain radius. 42% increase in sales.
Wow.
Because they were coming and everybody was happy. And then the other little detail was he got them to park their cars the back facing the entrance. So if anybody drew it, so he had a guy outside in the car park who went, no, if you turn your car around, it'll be better, you'll be able to get away more quickly. But then all the boots were open, so it was just like, we're going to put the stuff in. And he went, carloads disappeared. Whereas before, just the simple fact of people taking the product round the car, opening the boot, it was all chaos. Yeah. So
amazing, isn't it? How something so simple in theory can make such an impact and a difference. And like you said, that could then be knowing that and having that knowledge. You could help people apply that or something completely different but similar in their own industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think when you're so involved in the business, then it's very. So this is my, the clarity of taking time to reflect and actually just being honest with yourself and saying, does it really work? And then looking at that customer journey, because we all need customers, and just, are we giving them the very best service from start to finish? So when we were selling contact lenses into the optical trade, there was a guy who'd started the telephone conversation by saying, "I'm never going to work with your client again." He hated the rep, didn't like the service he'd got. So the lady on the phone, wonderful lady, just carried on the conversation. And then it transpired that he was opening a second shop, and it was about 20 odd miles away. And she intuitively said to him, well, what are you doing about your databasing? And you must have customers that live 20 miles away, but, what are you going to do? And he went, "Oh, I've never thought about this." So she said, "Well, I think we can create a database for you and we can do some communication." And bear in mind, this guy had said he never wanted to work with a client ever again. So we did a bit of work, it wasn't too tricky, Excel spreadsheet, and we sort of mapped out some things, and we said, you can send a letter to these people off the database. His first order, bearing in mind that contact lenses were 69p at the time, was $4,500.
Wow.
Because he actually wanted to kit out the whole new shop with the client's products. And he said it was simply because there was a service level there that was over and above just selling the product. And I think that's, particularly in entrepreneurship, that's where you need to be. You need to think of the customer journey the whole way through and what you can do to help.
Definitely setting yourself apart, I think, as we alluded to, in such a technology-driven world, can become harder and harder. But the service of that level can make such a difference with something that's less than £1, and you're getting an order for 4,500 is such a massive leap, and that would have made all the difference to do that.
Yeah. And again, it's this whole communication thing. It's just another human. The guy was very angry, and quite rightly so. He'd had very bad service, and we later found that he was on what he called the Friday afternoon run. So the rep would actually have a tick box, so he could have done another visit, but actually didn't really want to be there because he was only 10 miles away from home. And he was going, "I'm giving him coffee," and So it was allowing him just to sort of vent, if you like, or just get rid, and then just go, "Well, what's the problem?" "Well, the problem is that I have customers who live 20 miles away, so how am I going to fit them into the right practice?" So we helped with that.
So you mentioned, Simon, obviously that you offer coaching to businesses as well as the mergers and acquisitions side. Obviously, there's such a wealth of experience you've got across so many varied industries. I guess you feel that you can really help people in that area then and bring them a lot of benefits from going through that with you.
Yeah. So when I was finding sort of entrepreneurship difficult, I took myself off and did the course of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. So I'm a master practitioner in NLP. And I found that really helpful, understanding thought processes, understanding how the ego fits in, and sometimes in a negative fashion rather than a positive one. And so I couple that NLP skill and my business experience to coaching people.
Brilliant, so, makes a lot of sense. And do you try and, what's your normal format? Do you sit with people fortnightly, weekly, monthly? How do you structure?
It's normally monthly, and it's normally for minimum of an hour, possibly a couple of hours. And depending on the individual, I mean, I have a wonderful lady who is a senior executive in the NHS, and her quote is, "We just talk, Simon." and we do just talk. Yeah. And sometimes she brings sort of real sort of exasperation to the call. And other times it's, well, I just want to talk through this. I've got to do this presentation and that sort of stuff. And other times it's quite systemized. So it's both ends of the spectrum. So some people, I use a thing, the wheel of life. So this whole clarity thing, checking out where people are, and then we work through a whole series of stages, given off the back of that.
And is it the coaching you think that you find the most exciting or engaging now, or like what is the most fulfilling part of all these different adventures you've got?
I think it's so I've been told that helping is not a great word, but helping people realise their goals is just, I come off some of these coaching and go, at the end, was that of value? And people enthuse, but actually it's just being given them the space and opportunity to talk at a very deep level about what's going on in their business. So, yeah.
And as you reflect back on all of the different businesses you've worked in and are still doing, is there a particular highlight or something which you're particularly proud of? It's like, that was a great win or a great deal?
Thank you for the question. Yeah. So the whole mail order business. So I set up the mail order business for the Daily Mail and Classic FM. It was about 7 or 8 years of just wonderfulness.
Yeah.
If you like, everything, terrible cliche, was in flow. But it stemmed, the reason I like it so much is it stemmed from a meeting I was having with Classic FM, and it was a sales and marketing meeting. We were doing some work for them. And the sales and director and I walked out of the meeting room and down the corridor towards the lift. So as we walked, he turned around and he went, well, I've got this database of 300,000 names and, and again, a bit like that sort of intuition, sort of swan approach. I went, oh, well, you could sell them other products. You could do mail order. Lift opened, doors shut. I disappeared out into London and, got to the train. And about 3 weeks later, he phoned back and he went, this, my database and selling other products, what could you do? I went, well, just do mail order. So we raised 1.7 million quid, started the business, and eventually exited, left it with the Daily Mail, Classic FM, and sold product to people on a database.
Brilliant. Just shows the undiscovered potential that businesses can have within them, because I guess often people are so focused on their daily and weekly and monthly objectives that actually somebody just thinking outside of the box can completely open their mind to something that could seem quite obvious in other times.
Well, and the thing that I harp on a lot about is that actually, I agree with that comment, but actually it was the fact they were just sitting on this data and they had and actually the databases weren't as good as they suggested, because what both parties had done is they just parked people who'd entered competitions, they may have bought some stuff or they implied about a subscription. So it wasn't great in terms of selling stuff to people, which was the first sort of idea. But what it was is it cleaned all that data and it made both businesses less dependent. I mean, papers, as we know, are absolutely sort of plummeting in circulation. But that whole mail order side now, the Daily Mail, is very successful because it is selling product to their subscribers or like-minded readers. So people are often sitting on a goldmine, but they don't actually realise it in terms of data.
That sounds about right. What about sort of the biggest, I wouldn't say failures, lessons learned that you could share? Anything where you've particularly gone, I really should learn from that next time?
I feel there are so many. I think I was saying to somebody the other day, my biggest frustration is that I wish I didn't have to go through all of these, but I have. So not watching the numbers was something that I've definitely learnt. I think failing fast, I know it's a cliche, but I kept people on when actually it was clear they weren't doing the right job. They were expensive and they should have gone, and that's costly for a small business owner. And I think it's a bit of a contradiction, because as an entrepreneur, you believe that it will work and, the light at the end of the tunnel will come. But I think failing fast sometimes is very useful. We've touched on it earlier on, but the whole culture and attitude thing is really important. And I think I don't really want to say this, but I think benchmarking or checking some of the ideas. I've had some ideas that are far too wacky. Yeah. I think, you need to sleep on them and go, let's put some sanity into this. But I don't enjoy the failures. But actually, I've learnt, and sometimes you have to give them sort of time and space, and just sort of go, what didn't really work then. And I think the other thing is that you have to look at it holistically. So I talk lots of business owners, and sometimes they're doing things, and you go, well, why? And there's something going on in the periphery that actually makes them, less acute, or they're just doing that out of emotion rather than looking at it from a business point of view.
Yeah, lots of really powerful lessons there, definitely. Yeah. It's funny because when we sit in this seat and chat with various business owners, it's the similar things that people face as challenges and things that they've learned from and overcome to move forward. And there's definitely consistent themes, I would say, between a lot of them. Looking at how you're moving forward now, and you've mentioned some of what you're currently doing. What's your personal motivations, and what drives you to keep pushing in those directions?
So I became a single parent when my daughter was 12, and that was great. Talking of failures, it wasn't what I planned in any shape or form, but it created a very special relationship between her and I, because there was I remember standing in the kitchen. I was actually holding a fish slice at the time, which is unusual.
Painting a picture, it's okay, I can see it.
And I was sort of, and her comment was, well, you'll have to learn to cook better. And, we're in this on our own now. So that is really the motivation, to leave something for her, and to avoid, just to give her something that she could step into and run and manage would be a huge legacy and a motivation. I don't know this scientifically, but the other motivation is just to stay young. I think, when you're working and you're thinking and you're having to come up with ideas and people are sort of questioning you, I think that's better than my golf is not great, and I can only drink so many cocktails on the beach, So, and without being corny, I love people. I think, talking to people, I have a fascinating time just understanding, how people make money, what businesses they're in, their life story, and we all have a story. So it's great to hear that. So those are the motivators.
No, completely. I mean, again, we alluded to it, but us doing this podcast, just chatting to people, hearing their stories is so beneficial in terms of learning, and so interesting for us as well. So I completely understand what you mean there. Yeah, definitely. And you're looking to take on more and more of the right businesses in what you mentioned, and so you're proactively looking for people to work with if they're the right people.
Yes. Absolutely. So, again, that sales and marketing thing, lead generation is really important. Because I'm not actually working in it, and I want to. So, in the pet trade, for example, there is already a group of people I work with who are looking for businesses, and we have funding to develop a sort of roll up in the pet trade. For example, and then in the construction industry, it's the same in the print. So I'm not doing the work. I'm instigating, joining people together, finding funding, that sort of thing.
Brilliant. That sounds fantastic. Excellent. Thank you so much, Simon. It's been really fascinating to hear from you. And again, so much experience across a big variety of industries. And I think that's not only where you can help your clients, but it's been really interesting for us today as well. So thank you very much.
I don't know. I really appreciate it.
If someone has been listening and they feel that you'd be a really good fit for them, how can they get in touch, or how can they find out more?
I'm on LinkedIn, and the business name is Simon Morris Promotions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers. That wraps up another episode of the Business Growth Show. Thanks for joining us.
We hope it gave you some ideas or inspiration that you can take away and use in your own business.
Don't forget to drop us a like, a follow, and a rating, and hopefully we'll see you soon for the next episode.